Sabina Hitchen is an entrepreneur, speaker, and media expert dedicated to shining a spotlight on small business owners through her publicity education and solutions, as well as her on-air small business segments. All of her professional work is rooted in educating and empowering entrepreneurs to get publicity strategically and confidently. In Sabina's former professional life, she was a high school teacher and education curriculum creator before moving on to a career in public relations in New York City. It was there that she learned to successfully tell the stories of businesses of all sizes in the national and local media. Once she saw the impact that publicity had on small businesses, she dedicated herself to creating accessible solutions, tools, resources to help them utilize it for growth. Sabina now sits as the founder and principal of Press for Success PR Prep School, where business owners around the country can access streaming online PR and buzz-building classes, as well as connect with others around the country within the community that has grown around the platform. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. So Sabina, welcome to the PR Maven podcast.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Nancy. I'm excited to talk about something we both love so much.
Yes, exactly. We do. So we're going to be talking about publicity and why, Sabina, is publicity valuable to a business?
It's so hard to pick one reason, so I'm going to say all the things, and then I'm going to give you some of my favorite reasons. And the most is, of course, the obvious. It's visibility. It's validation, because again, it's one thing if I say, I'm the best cupcake maker ever, or I am the best graphic designer here. But if someone else says it, someone who my potential customer trusts, like someone in the media, it changes everything. And again, that visibility, people, you only have so much you can get out in your own pond, in your own circle, but publicity adds a whole other universe of viewers and listeners and potential customers who can get to know you. So that's the obvious. That gives you so much, that visibility, that validation, that chance for a sales boost. But I also like big picture. It's the way you can get your messaging and your purpose and your mission and your why into the world. And ultimately, that's how we serve, by making sure people can find us. Because again, we can be the best at what we do, but if people can't find us, then first of all, our businesses can't grow and scale because we're stuck with the same people we're always talking to. And then also, ultimately, we choose our professions, especially as business owners, because that's how we want to serve. That's how we feel called and excited to serve. And if people can't find us, we can't do that.
Well, it's so funny that you're talking about people being excited, because I find that your excitement and your passion for PR and publicity is contagious. So I love that. So speaking of which, what drew you into this field in the first place?
First of all, you're right about, I have such passion for publicity, and that's sort of why I ended up here, because my first career path was not in PR or marketing. I was a teacher. I was designing curriculum in Chicago, and I was a high school political science and history teacher, but I was called, like some are, to New York City. Just in my heart and in my head, I said, I have to be there, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And long story short, a friend introduced me. He said, I think you'd be great at public relations. And I was seriously like Googling, what is public relations? I was like, that's flattering. I have no idea what that is. I'm a teacher. So I fell into a job thanks to this reference at a big fashion house in New York City, and I started doing publicity there. And though I'm not a huge fashion junkie, but I quickly saw the power of PR. And so that's where it began in New York. And then I ended up working in a PR agency, and it exposed me to all different kinds of businesses and how they can use publicity. And my specialty there was the small business owners and entrepreneurs. That's the niche they gave me. So I started seeing like, this is amazing, the power it gives to a small business. So that's what drew me to it, this sort of accidental exposure. And then I thought, I mean, how doesn't everyone talking about this? To be able to share your story in the magazines and the websites and the TV, like this is amazing. So that's how I got there, and I haven't left since.
Well, that's a great story. I love that. And, I never actually worked in New York City. I used to travel there frequently, but I do kind of in hindsight wish that I had spent some time there because it is the media capital of the world, and there's so many opportunities there.
There's tons of opportunity, and it really gave me my first chance, my first exposure to media. And I'm also saying this so anyone listening who, whether they are new to the business or doing their own publicity, it's a reminder that we get to publicity when we get there, right? This was not my first job, but I fell in love with it, and I knew it would be the foundation of whatever I did. So even though I'm not in an agency now anymore, I just feel like there's great power. But doing that in New York City, especially now that I live in Maine, like you, it was this beautiful, beautiful professional moment that I feel really fortunate to have been around. And again, like created opportunities and relationships that I still call on today.
Well, I had the great opportunity when Angus King, who's now our U.S. Senator from Maine, when he was governor of Maine, he and his wife, Mary, used to love to go do media tours in Manhattan, which my agency would coordinate. And so that was very exciting. We would go on the train to New York City, but we always had a state police escort with us. And then we would set up desk side visits throughout the city. And that was like one of the most exciting things in my career was to organize those media tours. Angus himself would meet with business press, and his wife, Mary, would meet with the travel and arts and culture press. So like we would be doing 2 simultaneous media tours over the course of 2 or sometimes 2.5 days. That was just like an amazing opportunity. I'm so grateful that I had that in my career. I think that was back in the last century, though. Well,
it's funny you say that, Nancy, because I was just thinking about desk sides like yesterday and thinking, man, I miss those days. I mean, we can't all really gather socially anyways now, but I remember when I first started PR, and I remember being in the Hearst building, the magazine building, and going up the escalator to one of my first desk sides that I was doing on my own. And the feeling that you get, and just like, again, as silly as it sounds and repetitive, just like the power of media and press and storytelling, when you're in that moment and when you're taking part in it, there's a great energy there. And even though it's virtual now, we can capture a little bit of that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Sabina, how do you think publicity for small business is changing and evolving in 2021?
That's such a great question because it is. And first of all, there's a couple different ways. Number one, we are all living in it right now because the world has changed so much with the pandemic and the politics and so much turbulence in our country. That's reflected in the media, right? So that's one thing that's happening. So as a small business owner, we have to say to ourselves, okay, how does that impact me? For instance, one thing that's happening is small business stories are becoming more and more of something that I see the press wanting to cover. They want to cover inspiring and uplifting small business stories, whether it's local publicity or national publicity. So that sees us as entrepreneurs and small business owners given more opportunity. There's more real estate, so to speak. There are more inches for our stories. So that's big. So we have to say, I need to seize this by saying, this is the year I put my story out there, my why, my how, or this is the year I find a hot topic in the news. There's lots of them these days that I can piggyback onto and speak to and highlight my business. So there's a lot more, to me, publicity opportunity for small business owners because I think now more than ever, both the media and the consumers are here for it. We want to hear about our small business owners. We want to support them more than ever. As a publicist, I feel less resistance when I'm trying to share even the stories of the smallest businesses that are like, maybe a one-woman shop in her home in Maine, which I actually was just talking to someone about the other day. She was getting national press about her small business, one-woman shop in Maine. So again, that's happening. But bigger picture-wise, Nancy, something I want people to see, because I feel like this is where things are going. And a lot of industry people, if they're listening, probably we're already having conversations about this, that publicity is changing. When I started doing publicity and when you started doing publicity, it was one thing. But to me, building buzz for a business now, it's publicity plus. So I see it as a trifecta that small business owners have to, and anyone need to say, like, if I want to build buzz for my business, if I want to get publicity and eyeballs on my business, I need to see it as publicity plus community plus content. And how are all of those three pieces working together? So I'm getting my traditional press, but I'm also growing my community around my brand, and of course, letting them celebrate my publicity with me. And I'm creating content outside of the publicity. I'm sort of my own media company as well. So I feel like people need to see that publicity is now a piece of something that I also have to commit to doing these other things. And when they all work together, that's when I really stand out, if that makes sense.
Oh, that totally makes sense. I feel that, the combination of publicity and then having a community, or, I called it an audience, or it could be called a platform. But, so to generate publicity and then share it with your targeted audience or your people, and then get them to share it with their people too. And having good content that's either educational or entertaining or informative, that's how you grow your community, because people want to connect with you through that valuable content. So,
and that because you're creating that. You are sort of a queen of content as well. So you're doing the publicity, but you have a podcast, you're speaking places, you're contributing articles, you have your own blog. And that's what everyone needs to be. They need to know that it can't be just, okay, I'm getting my press, I'm getting my publicity, that's fine. Because now, again, like you have that community on social media you need to be nurturing. Maybe your podcast community, maybe your customer community that hangs out in a Facebook group, wherever it is, like you need a tribe around your business, and you need to grow that tribe, knowing that, so it's not just publicity, it's also just nurturing that tribe and that community, that audience, as you're saying. And then again, that content that you are generating, so they're not just coming over to read about your cupcakes all day or to learn about your graphic design specials. They're coming for the high value content you're creating. And all of those three things working together, sort of like a stew, because everything to me is like a food reference. Then I feel it's like my mom's a former restaurant owner. I grew up in a kitchen. It all makes sense to me. So it's like that swirling stew, and all of that together is like the aroma that lures people to your business. Publicity alone is like a stew with one ingredient. No one wants that stew. They want a stew with all kinds of stuff, publicity, community, content, and that's going to lure your customers in and keep them there.
Well, thank you for mentioning your mom, because I think we have to give a shout out to your parents. And that's really how we met in the first place. Is I live in a condo complex where Sabina's parents live, and her father, who's a doctor, moved into the building like a few months before, I think, Maria, who's Sabina's mom, came. So, and our parking spots are next to each other. So I started talking with Phil in the parking garage, and he's such a sweet and gentle man. I mean, he is like in the dictionary next to gentleman is a picture of Phil Patassin. He is just such a kind soul, and
he is. I can't even deny that. And I've been hearing that my whole life. Everyone's like, "Your parents are so great," but also it's in a funny way. My dad is so amazing, and my mom, who really was talking about me needing to meet you before we even met, was always sure the moment that she met you that we had to know each other. Of course, we share a similar industry, but I'll also just give her a shout out. My mom, Mama Maria, who owned a restaurant when I was growing up, she was getting publicity before I knew publicity was a thing. There'd be newspaper articles hanging in our hallway with my mom in it. And I didn't even realize, I was too young to understand. So again, in a way, publicity's always been around me, but even she knew then, you've got to be seen. You've got to be heard. People need to say, this is the restaurant I want to go to. Help them make that choice. It's because that newspaper article was helping them make that choice.
Well, my next question relates to you being passionate, but I know where you got your passion from because Maria is like, she's a bundle of passion and energy. She's just so excited about life itself. Every time I see her, she's excited about her grandchildren, or she's excited about a new restaurant or a new destination or renting a cabin on a lake, and whatever she's doing, she's just so excited about it and just wants to share.
Totally true. Totally true. I share that level. Even with my first company, they titled me Chief Excitement Officer. And I was like, yeah, that's right. Pretty much.
That's great. I love that. So why are you so passionate about teaching publicity to small business owners and entrepreneurs, Sabina?
Well, I am. And that truly is because as I was working in publicity, so I was at a fashion house, and then I was at an agency. And then in my late 20s, I started my own PR agency. And what I saw was, I know the power of publicity. I know that it's a necessity. I really believe it is not a luxury. It's a necessity for a business. People need to discover you. They need to trust you. They need to get to know you and your story, etc. But I also know as a publicity provider that it's very much out of reach for entrepreneurs and small business owners that do not have the budget. Because in truth, you need to commit both budget-wise, like it's expensive. It's part of your overhead. Even if you find a smaller service provider, it's still an expense. And it also needs to be an expense that you can commit to for more than 3 months. It pains me when I see a small business owner saying, he's going to hire this publicist for 3 months. We're going to spend a bunch of money. I'm like, that is not enough impact for you. That's like the beginning of a plan coming together, really. So you need to be able to do all these things. And there wasn't a solution. And as a former teacher who at the time was working in the PR agency, it was like a light bulb moment of we will create a solution. And that's what I've been doing ever since, because I'm passionate about entrepreneurs and small business owners having the tool. In my fantasy world, they will all hire a publicist when they can get there. But until they get there, they need to learn how to do it on their own and prepare themselves and go after those opportunities. So as you can probably hear, I just want them to know how to do that. I knew there wasn't a solution. So we created Press for Success, my PR school, to do that. Because if you are not even just learning about publicity beyond executing it, you are leaving customers and money on the table. So I know they have to be able to do it. And as a former teacher and lover of publicity, I knew that not just me, but the team that I work with could do that for them.
Well, I actually joined your Press for Success program not too long ago, and I have been enjoying sitting in on your lessons and your classes, and I've learned a lot too. So I just love the way, again, you have created a community and everybody shares their successes and their contacts. I mean, that has been really invaluable to me as everybody, you can put a shout out like, hey, I need a contact at the Today Show or Good Morning America. And you're teaching small business owners how to land those big placements.
Oh my gosh, they're getting amazing publicity. And they're also, to me, beyond that, they're learning how to do it. And that's the power, because no one wants to be a one-hit wonder. There's always a moment, or there are often moments when we can land that Today Show or that Good Morning America, which is phenomenal. And it can be a game changer for a business. And we see those success stories at Press for Success weekly, hand to the universe. We see it weekly. We post about it because I believe in proof in your testimonials. But what I really love is that they are engaging in it and doing it, because we've all taken classes, whether at the gym or for our businesses, and we don't actually do it, but they're actually sustaining and doing the work and learning the power of publicity. So I love that.
Well, I love it too, because it's really remarkable, I think, what kind of media results your people are getting. So it gets me jazzed too.
Thanks.
So what PR strategies do you think are most often overlooked?
Ooh, good question. So I think because the people, any client I have huge clients that I still privately work with, and we have small business clients. No matter what, businesses want quick hits often. They want quick publicity. And to me, especially in the small business space, I think that means because we want to take action, we're so excited to share our story and our ideas and our tips or whatever you're promoting, our event, that we don't invest in what really makes a difference. And to me, the back end work makes the most difference. And so number one, I feel like we hear classes all the time. It's the dawn of online education now. So everyone's saying like, build your list, and everyone's talking about sales list, your newsletter list. Who are you selling to? But I think if people spent like twice as much or 3 times as much time curating and creating an amazing media list, and from that media list of the targets where you want to share your story or your tips or your advice, if they take that and then, make sure they're the right people, that takes time, and then build relationships from them. And I know that's a very common thing to say, like relationships are everything, but I also think they're the most commonly overlooked, because if people were giving a heart-to-heart to themselves and say, okay, I'm really stuck on publicity, and I'll say to them, can you tell me inside your heart, when you're quiet by yourself at night, are you giving 100% and trying to really build relationships? Even if that can be a little awkward sometimes or intimidating, are you really showing up for that? Are you consistent? Are you building those relationships because you're also reading their content and engaging? Like if you are really, really getting into that, you will get those relationships. It's just natural. And then that will lead you to responses to your emails, longer term publicity. It might not even be a publicity hit that comes out for months or even years, but that's what you need to do, is like relationships are everything. And we skip them trying to get to the quick hit. So that's one thing I think is overlooked. And I know you, Nancy, are, again, really passionate about relationships like I am. And so I know that's important too.
Totally. And, I often talk about my secret weapon, which is actually sending handwritten thank you notes to journalists when they cover a story. And I think that's so rarely done that people will really remember receiving a thank you note. And often they'll keep it for a long time on their desk. So
I do that all the time when small business owners send me a handwritten note after they've receive something from me or learn something from me. They hunt me down and send me a note. I will save it on my desk because it's something I do as a human, right? And then because of that, I think of that business owner. And then when an opportunity or a story comes up, by the way, I'm thinking of that business owner. So I think that's really important to point out. And I just also wanted to say something else. I think that is a couple other things I think are overlooked. And number one is we forget that once you get publicity, that is not the end. This is when you have to leverage your publicity, because not everybody is tuning into News Center Maine or Headline News or CNN or Fox and Friends or whatever you're on at that very moment. We are inundated with content. So when you get that publicity, that's just like the beginning, right? Then you have to share it on your newsletter, on your social media, share it with your community, put it on your website, put it on your sales pages, like maybe attach it to a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad, have it on your LinkedIn, maybe have it in your signature, have it. Like, there's so many things you can do with it to make it last longer, even blogging about it. So when I come to your website, if I didn't watch you on it, like what if I just discovered your business the day after you got publicity? Would I never know that CNBC called you the next big thing in children's snacks? Like I need to know that. So because I want that validation. So I want to see that publicity then on your blog and in your newsletter and on that sales page. So when I'm going on your children's healthy snacks shopping page, I see these press moments, and that helps me click the purchase button. So you need to know that that should live on. Even on my social media, I have press opportunities that are scheduled to be reshared on Thursdays as a throwback Thursday, celebrating some press I received, even if it was like 2 years ago. Because I want my community to see that this happened, and I want them to change their perception of me, even subconsciously, every time they see me celebrating my publicity, which is validation that they should be choosing me.
I was just gonna say that goes right back to what you said first. That gives you third-party credibility, visibility, and validation. And yeah, I mean, I remember when I first started working in PR, and this was before we had email or the internet, and we would send out copies. We would photocopy articles that we would generate for clients and send them in the mail to like the mailing list. And now, with the internet, there's so many things we can do as far as social sharing and also like on the homepage of your website to have like as seen on or as seen in.
People love that. They love those logos. And you know what you're saying socially, I was like, don't forget to say this. just when we're talking about, like, you're sharing it on your Facebook, you're sharing it on your Twitter, it triggered a memory in my head that, again, another huge strategy, all of you listeners, that I learned from you, Nancy, is like, I am in my Twitter renaissance right now. I had given up on Twitter. I was like, this is for people who are like slow to social media. And then you and I, because I had a chance to interview you for Press for Success on local publicity, and you talked about using Twitter. And since that conversation, I made a conscious choice to re-engage on Twitter and to reconnect with media there. And it's been like a game changer. So that's huge.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I definitely feel like Twitter is a secret weapon for connecting with journalists, because most journalists are on there, and because they're addicted to the ongoing stream of news that's shared on Twitter, and you can connect and, just like things that a journalist is saying for a while, and then go in for that direct message when you have something to pitch to them. Well, Sabina, we're going to continue our conversation shortly, but first I want to talk about my book, Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand, which is available on Amazon.com as a paperback, a Kindle, and even an Audible edition. And I recorded that Audible edition at the Portland Pod where I am today. We will be giving away a free Kindle version if you go to prmaven.com/giveaway. You can sign up. So we're now going to hear a little bit about my Message Mapping Mastery online course, and then we'll be right back with more from Sabina Hitchen.
Do you want to grow your client or customer base? Perhaps increase brand awareness? Maybe tell your unique story more effectively? Of course you do. But you may be worried that you don't have enough expertise to make that happen. Well, no worries, PR Maven Nation. Let the PR Maven herself, Nancy Marshall, show you how easy it is to get your message across effectively using a powerful yet simple tool, a message map. Nancy's training is often called informative and constructive, well-designed and impactful, with a perfect blend of theory and real-life experience. You will leverage Nancy's expertise to create your own message map when you register for this comprehensive online video training course, which is broken down into 4 easy-to-understand modules. Normally, this course is priced at $147, but for listeners of the PR Maven podcast, that's you, PR Maven Nation, it's only $29 when you enter the code word podcast during enrollment. It even includes a workbook and bonus content to guide you through the process. So go to prmaven.com and click on the Message Map Mastery course to enroll today. Remember, enter the word podcast during enrollment for a special discounted price of $29.
Welcome back, and today we're talking with Sabina Hitchen, founder of Press for Success, and I want to dive right back in with more questions. So Sabina, give me an example of an amazing accomplishment from one of your students.
Yes, and can I just tell you, when you asked, I started dancing in my chair without even realizing, because I get like my giddiness over small business publicity success becomes like physical. So I started dancing. So there you go. There are lots of big victories. I'll tell you, we have had in the past quarter, over 15 students hit either Good Morning America or Today's Show. Those are national shows, feature segments on them, not just like a side note. So those are some huge victories. They've been in all kinds of local and national press. But when I'm trying to think of a story I love the most, I would say there are tons. They're all like, I can't choose one. But I will say one that stands out is a small business owner who has a side hustle. So she's an engineer by day and a jewelry maker by night. And I share this because also if you're listening and you're thinking, well, I don't have all day to devote to my business, neither does she, but she makes it work. And what she did beyond, she's landed some great publicity, is she learned publicity. And to me, that's the amazing accomplishment. She did it in her downtime. She did it by herself. And because she's taught herself publicity through our courses and our tools, our PR opportunities, our interviews, etc., she has twice in a row now booked Small Biz Saturday feature stories in her local news, TV, and newspaper. Again, 2 years in a row. She can now easily call her local newspapers for coverage. So if she does something exciting, so she recently created a special collection of jewelry that honors healthcare heroes and donates to them. So she has now built such solid relationships. She's so confident, and she's a shy gal, that she can now reach out to those places and say, hey, I'm doing something to salute our healthcare heroes. Would you like to cover it? Her name is Anna Hudick. Her business is called Inside My Locket. I want to say that so you can check her out and know that she is real. But to me, it is a living example of how you can come to us and have no idea what PR is, sort of like when I came to New York City. And we will teach you how to do it in a way that feels okay, and you can boost your confidence. It feels strategic, and you can become like Anna. So she did it. And now when she wants something, she goes after it in terms of PR, all the while still working her electric engineering job, which she likes by day. So that's one of my favorite success stories. And we have lots of them like her, but I love how as a publicist, I know how hard it can be to book certain kinds of stories. So I love how this small business owner is booking herself like full page spreads, Nancy, for Small Biz Saturday, like a cover story of her newspaper. And I was like, that's my girl. It is publicity is always a possibility. And that's what they show me, these entrepreneurs we work with.
Well, I know one of the things that I've learned from you is like we need to kind of throw out all of the rules and etiquette that we thought and kind of formalities that we thought were a requirement. And I do sense that this evolution is happening like during COVID. And maybe it's because people aren't seeing each other face to face. And so everything's happening, by email or texting or even the telephone, the old-fashioned telephone. So I feel that there's just new rules of PR, and you are teaching them in Press for Success.
I'm learning them too, girl. Like, I can't believe, I'm still, as someone who, I've worked in PR for 15 years, not a ton of time, but a long enough time that I still can't believe it's okay to pitch someone on Instagram. Like, there's an interview on Press for Success with a journalist from CBS who's saying she loves being pitched on Instagram. And I'm like, really? I'm not always there yet, but I'm learning to be there. And it's almost like going back to when you first start a business or first start working for yourself and you try a lot of wild things because you're like, why not? I don't know much better. And then as we get more seasoned, we stay inside the box of what we know works. And I've been really discovering through our students who really try things their own way. Like, I believe there's strategies you must stay within and you have to understand how the industry works. But they've been showing me the things they do, and it's exciting. It's exciting. Just bottom line is like, be a good relationship builder, right? Be a professional, but try new things. You're right.
Well, I have sort of a funny story from the very beginning of my career. Again, in New York City, when I was representing Sugarloaf, the ski area, and we had very minimal budgets, and we would go to New York City to do, again, these desk side visits, but this was not like going with the governor with a state trooper escort. This was like sleeping on a couch of a friend that I knew down there. And sometimes I wouldn't even have made appointments. So I remember going with my boss from the ski area into the magazine, the offices of Ski and Skiing magazine, which were at 2 Park Avenue. And my boss said, Nancy, go in the ladies' room and just stand there and wash your hands. And if somebody comes up next to you, introduce yourself. And I actually made a contact there. I was like, hi, I'm Nancy. I'm from Sugarloaf in Maine. Have you ever skied in Maine before?
Oh my God, that's amazing. That's amazing. Of course you did. Oh my God, that's amazing.
That's what I call
love that though.
Guerrilla PR, right?
That is like ultimate. That should be a story in one of your books for sure, if it isn't yet.
Yeah, well, that's how I got my start. So actually, to be able to pitch somebody on Twitter seems like a real easy thing.
Yeah, Nancy, if you can do it in the bathroom, you can do it on your computer.
So, Sabina, what is the best way for someone to learn how to pitch?
I believe, so first you need to learn the basics, like learn how to do it the right way. And to me, again, when I think of pitch, I automatically think email, because that's where I really, like, when I hit my stride in PR, that's how it was being done more and more. So I guess even before that, I'll say everyone has their own special sauce that's going to work best for them for pitching. I know you love a phone. My husband, who is like, has been a journalist since he was like 17 or 18 in a local newspaper in England. He is passionate about phone pitching. He's like, why wouldn't I just call someone up? And he's a journalist who likes that better. So the first I'll say is like, but pick what works for you, because some people are great on the phone. Some people feel more comfortable on email. So first, choose what works for you, and then learn how to do it the right way. At Press for Success, we teach a model of pitching that has always worked for me. We call it the PSS pitch, only because it stands for perfectly simple and successful. And because that's what it is. And we do that, and it's really simple with just like bullets and short sentences, but it has worked for people landing anything from CNBC to the New York Times to their local small business press or their local newspaper. So my point is, like, learn the basics of an email pitch that is the best. There's freebies on Press for Success on how to do that. And then to me, the other way to learn how to pitch is actually doing the work. And I think that goes for anything in small business and life. You can read how to do it all the time, but until you actually start doing it, you will not learn what works best for you. You will not get your rhythm and your flow. Like, I read a lot of books before I had my daughter on how to be a mommy. And I feel like until I lived it, it's like reading about learning how to swim when you're not actually in the water. It's not going to get you very far. So you have to get in the PR pool and come swimming with us. And that is when you will, because you can learn the methodology, but the execution and the rhythm, because pitching is like a tango, sort of the give and take with the media. That happens when you actually show up and do the work.
I love that it's like a tango. I know.
Doesn't it feel like, because it's like, people are like, how do you know when to follow up? I'm like, you got to feel that, right?
Oh, yeah. And you've got to feel like how far you can push too. And you've got
sometimes you learn the hard way, guys. Really,
yeah, right, exactly. God forbid they block your email.
But you have to listen also, because people get so scared that I'm like, you have to be pretty bad and pretty unprofessional. And so if you can say to yourself, like, okay, I'm being polite, I'm being professional in the sense that I know they cover my beat. I'm not randomly pitching like brassieres to a sports editor that makes not sports bras even. So again, like, know who you're pitching. But if you're like, I'm being professional, polite, and I have to be persistent, that's my job, it's okay. Like, if it's not a perfect pitch, they'll get the point. But learn the methodology is my point, and then get to the work, because that's when it happens. Like you said, Nancy, that's when you feel it. And you don't get to do that until you start trying.
Well, and the other thing is that someday those journalists might need you for something too. So there's a certain Associated Press reporter from way back, and he used to always be pretty mean to me when I was calling him with a story. But there was one incident where he needed me badly to help him access sources about a story that was happening at the ski resort where I was working. And, after that, he took my calls because I got him somebody to interview, and he remembered that. So one thing about journalists is they do have long memories, and they'll remember if you help them, or they'll remember also if you were a jerk to them.
Exactly. And then another just note to tag onto that is, again, a good note about pitching is when you are consistent with your value, even if they don't need something from you immediately, they will then remember you when they need someone with your value.
Right. Another thing, as again, this is sort of a little secret weapon, is a lot of journalists want 3 examples. So if you are a jewelry maker in Maine, if you actually come with an idea about a jewelry maker in Minnesota and one in Oregon, that's going to give them the 3 examples they might need. So I remember using that technique with a certain journalist in New York who said, Nancy, you've been so helpful. The fact that you brought me 3 examples and not just your own client. So it might behoove you to, team up with others who do the same thing that you do.
It does, because it's more of a story then, less of a commercial.
Right, exactly. So, Sabina, what is the difference between targeted pitching and using a wire service like PR Newswire to send out a release?
Gosh, well, I always say, like, first of all, it's what I do and don't do. But I believe, so targeted pitching, you're pitching a specific person. You are landing in their inbox individually. And I find that when you customize your pitches, especially as a small business owner or entrepreneur, and you are landing it in the inbox of one specific journalist or blogger or reporter, whoever it is these days, I feel like that's a exponentially higher chance of your story landing, at least the stories I deal with. A wire service is going to send that out, or a press release is going to release your news to loads of other people. So though a lot of other people are seeing it, is the result going to be that a lot of other people are responding? I find that's a no. I think, of course, some organizations, larger organizations or movements or pieces of news it's good to have a press release. You send it out en masse, and the people who need to get it have an opportunity to gather information from the news wires and releases. But I find, at least for my audiences who are small business owners and entrepreneurs, the time of the press release has passed for them. And again, unless there's like a huge news announcement, but you can take that news announcement and you can have a press release and just attach it to an individual email, because you probably don't need 2,000 people to hear your news. And it's funny, I talk to my husband all the time because he was the editor of the New York Daily News. He's done news for So Long magazine, newspaper, online was his latest. And I said, how many news releases did you read? He was like, barely ever. I looked for the pitches. He looked for the custom email pitch from somebody who followed up with him, who knew who he was, who covered his beat. So to me, at least on my end, and to each her own, everyone has an opinion, I feel that it's a difference between a small business owner getting faster press and relationships. That's the individual pitching. And the press releases to me are like sending out mass news with less result. But that's just my opinion.
Well, I agree. And I feel like press release is something that almost anybody can do. Mm-hmm. But to be able to do a targeted pitch requires, a strategy and tactics, and to be really good at it, you have to have practice at it. So
yeah, and they want to feel special. They don't want to feel like, oh my gosh, she just sent this story to everybody. That we don't need that. We want to see something custom made for us, even if you're copying and pasting a pitch and just changing a few sentences. Like, make it custom, and even better if you can customize the story for the actual outlet.
Yeah, and if you do that cut and paste thing, make sure that you delete.
Oh my gosh, right? Don't call everyone Greg. That's going to be awkward. Yeah. That's like my baby PR mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. Sabina, what is a book, an app, or a website that you have found helpful, and why?
Yes. So I am a podcast junkie. So I listen to The Daily for the New York Times. I know that wasn't maybe an option, but I listen to The Daily for the New York Times podcast to know what matters and to learn more about it. And then, like I said to you before, speaking of apps, I've had a renaissance on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I think every business owner should be investing their time there again.
I agree, absolutely. I spend a lot of time on both of those platforms, Twitter and LinkedIn, definitely. Mm-hmm. So how can people get in touch with you, Sabina?
So then my answer there would be, of course, the opposite. I'd say Instagram. But you can, of course, go to pressforsuccess.com or sabinaknows.com, both my websites. But also, if you're a social media butterfly like me, I live for Instagram, Insta Stories, everything on IG. And of course the other platforms, but I'd love for you to find me there. I'm at Sabina Knows, SabinaKnows. I'm sure you have that linked somewhere, and they can find me there. It's a great way to connect. And since we can't meet in person, you can at least feel me out virtually.
Well, thank you. This has been so much fun. I feel like we could go on forever and ever, and maybe we'll have to have you back. So thank you for your time, Sabina. I know you're a busy person. I really appreciate it. And I know that everybody in PR Maven Nation is going to enjoy our conversation.
You are very welcome. This was so much fun, and I look forward to catching up with you soon in person.
I hope so, too. I'll look for you in the garage. That's it for this week's episode. I'd like to thank you for listening, and if you feel that you've gotten value out of today's conversation, consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever app you're using to tune in. If you haven't subscribed yet, you should do so. I release a new episode each week, and subscribing will make sure you get an alert when there's a new episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation by going to prmaven.com/nation and clicking join. It's free, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you have an Alexa-enabled device, be sure to add the PR Maven Marketing Minute to your daily flash briefing menu. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.